Hello, Internet. Welcome to another edition of Your Therapist Needs Therapist. I'm your host, Jeremy Schumacher, licensed marriage and family therapist. And this week we are talking about drama. We're talking about big news in the world of therapy, the business world of therapy. And, well, to be fully honest with you, podcast listeners, YouTube viewers, this doesn't affect me at all. And I'm sort of gleefully proud of my hypervigilant, raised in a traumatic religious setting, neurodivergent brain to have seen this coming a long time ago and stayed away in a way where my business is insulated from this. But it is a big deal, and then I'm happy it's not affecting me and won't be affecting my clients, won't be impacting the way that I want to run my practice at all. It is bad overall. And the idea that other therapists didn't see it coming doesn't make it better. Although I do think it fits with part of the theme of what I've certainly maybe not started out the podcast with, but have shifted into some class consciousness and also calling other therapists out for their shitty business practices. This is all part of that. So if you're not a therapist, I still think this session could be interesting for you. And if you don't want to listen, you like and subscribe and leave me a review wherever you're listening, and then don't listen. But it's going to be on the business side of things, and we're also going to talk about like how capitalism is, of course, ruining everything, and it'll be fun, I promise. In the way that this podcast about mental health is fun. The big news is Aetna, who is an insurance company, and Alma, who is like a therapy tech platform? ? I don't use Alma, and I'm not in network with any insurance. So again, this doesn't affect me. But Alma is sort of in that same vein as Headway, which is one of these sort of tech startup, whatever. We've got money, we're going to offer reduced rates, but we're going to pay our therapists really well, blah, 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 blah. Said every disruptor of every industry ever, because when you have venture capital money, you spend to get a lion's share of the market, and then you make services worse, which is why I did not want to bother with any of this stuff when I opened my practice. And when I decided I wasn't going to take insurance, which was like the very correct call, some of these things were like still sort of new-ish. Again, like the rise and fall of these things has been very fast. And basically, I'm not sure if it's Aetna, I'm not sure if it's Alma. They're pointing their fingers at each other, blaming each other. But this is a thing that's been coming. I think the insurance industry is going to collapse sooner rather than later. The way that it works here in America, we're the last game in town. And the scam has run its course. And with any sort of scam of capitalism, when you can extract wealth, there comes a point where like that stops working, and then it becomes sort of a game of hot potato. Somebody's got to be left holding the bag that isn't worth anything and eat the loss. And that's capitalism, it's just a shell game. And insurance is perhaps one of the biggest perpetrators, one of the worst of the shell game of, I'm sorry, how are you making any money off of this? Because it is just an outright scam in this country. But why would therapists then fall for this? Why would a lot of private practice owners who should know better and who have maybe moved away from the insurance model get sucked into this? And why would the insurance company and or mental health provider platform do this? I think that part's pretty self-explanatory in my diatribe about capitalism. It's for money. Basically what happened is they have cut rates across the board, devastatingly so. Ends up being like a 42% decrease in payment to providers. And the other option for this week's podcast was about the mosque shooting in San Diego. So while everyone wants to like talk about mental health whenever there's a shooting, nobody wants to pay for it. And that's a problem. It's a problem when we've created a society that is crazy making, and then nobody is there to support people when they feel crazy for being aware of how poorly things are happening. And so, yeah, when I opened my practice, Headway was the thing. Alma was new. And I was like, why would I want an external third party involved in my payment? That's specifically what I don't want in not taking insurance. I've been a mental health provider for 17 years. I started very young. If you're like, you don't look that old. 17 years of doing mental health. Some of it has been spent in higher ed. Most of it has been spent in private practice. When I started out, I worked at an agency, a larger practice. I had terrible splits. I was a 1099 independent contractor, did a lot of work, worked a lot of hours, didn't get paid particularly well. No insurance, no nothing. I went into higher ed when I needed insurance because my wife was moving to part-time when we were having our first kid. And then when I left higher ed, I went back into private practice, a smaller practice that didn't take insurance. So I've worked, and then when I opened my own practice, I did take insurance. So I've worked in the setting where we took insurance and we're in network with all of the things. And again, my experience with that was really poor. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, LMFT. Generally, the billing code that I would use is 9847, which is family therapy with the patient present. We do that for family therapy. You do that for couples therapy, which is predominantly a majority of what my entire career has been. And so, and then you have to diagnose, right? If you're using insurance, you have to diagnose. And so there are these things called V codes. This is how I was taught. This isn't necessarily what the DSM-5 all has. But when I was taught and when I was taking insurance, there were V codes, or a bunch of V codes for relationship issues. Insurances would not reimburse for a V code. So you had to do a diagnosis that insurance would pay for. Whatever you picked, it did not matter. At some point, you tripped some sort of algorithm that the insurance was using. This was before like AI and algorithms were common parlance. We've known about algorithms as therapists for a long time because you had like actuary and math nerds using them to decide who got covered and who didn't. And the insurance companies were employing these math nerds to maximize their profit by making sure that people didn't get insurance reimbursement, wouldn't cover things that were a loss for them. And again, like healthcare is a cost. Healthcare is always going to be a cost, which is why it should be through one payer from the government, because the only person who has a vested interest in having a healthy population is the government. You cease to exist as the country if you don't have a population. And so, yeah, single payer healthcare, which the global north has figured out except for America. And the global north has then figured out that like it goes poorly, so let's cut funding to it. And they're like, oh shit, there is not a better option. We need to fund the shit out of this. Let's fund it to the capacity that we can. Oh wow, it runs a lot better when we fund it. And again, healthcare is going to be a cost, so whatever. So there's no way to turn a profit on it unless you are rejecting or not paying a fair rate for what people are seeing their providers for, which is why the hypothetical alleged folk hero Luigi Mangione is so popular, because again, whoever is running the major 7 insurance companies are killing people, allegedly. I don't know. I don't know what I'm allegedly there. By denying coverage to things that will have lethal consequences, they're killing people. And we have such a goldfish mentality in this country, which isn't true. That's mean to goldfish. They have better memories than that. And that's a myth that goldfish have short-term memories, and goldfish and not raised in captivity even better. So maybe we should treat wildlife better. Anyway, that's beside the point. I care about the goldfish and the therapists. I just empathy off the charts. He said pretty sarcastically. I do though. I do care. I'm so off topic. The healthcare is always going to be a cost. The CEOs who are declining coverage or saying we're not going to cover this, or coming up with whatever convoluted legalese they need to deny coverage, are killing people. that has real consequences. Lots of people die every year in America from preventable diseases. Lots of people die every year from mental health crises that lead to suicide every year because people don't have access to the resources they need. And insurance has been the number one culprit in that. Now, there is a therapy shortage. We know there are not enough providers for enough people who want to see a therapist, and more therapists are leaving the profession than are coming in. This is well documented. This has been a problem since before COVID. COVID made it worse. And the system is broken, right? We are the crumbling empire. Shit's falling apart. The institutions are failing. So in light of all of this, and again, like the other topic for this week could have been mosque shooting and the mental health of mass shootings. Maybe we'll do it next week. We'll save that for next week. I'm sure nothing of import will happen between now and then. We like to talk about mental health as a scapegoat for like crises in a way that lets us bypass doing anything to do that. Again, anybody who's been like, any politician who's brought up mental health in the aftermath of a mass shooting has not then gone on to either ban guns or wartime firearms. Even though the Supreme Court has set the standard technically that there needs to be historical context, which would mean that you cannot have a firearm and gunpowder in the same building. That's the historical context. But again, reality doesn't matter to the Supreme Court. The politicians also are not funding mental health care, right? The state of Wisconsin, this came up just recently when I was talking about the episode on Wisconsin's mental health action plan. Was the state of Wisconsin is funding crisis hotlines and warm lines for people who are having mental health crises, but the state is funding that. We are not funding that on a federal level anymore. It's been one of the things that has been cut specifically because this administration hates living things, people and animals, which is why they're really, really bad for the environment. So we have a therapy shortage. We have multiple mental health crises. Every mental health crises are up, have been since COVID. They have not gone back down. They haven't really leveled off. Again, it's bleak out there. And in the light of this, Alma and or Headway together both either decided to cut rates. And sort of specific things that will affect nearly everyone. And they basically addressed some issues in the worst possible way they could. They had options sort of A, B, and C. A is like A and B were like fine, not great, didn't solve anything, but would be a lot better. And then C was like universally will make everything worse across the board. And they're like C, 100%. So they cut reimbursement rates. Which is, again, they have lowered the reimbursement rate for a 53-minute session to a 38-minute session, which is basically saying either see more clients per day for less money or continue to see the clients for the amount of time you see them now for less money, right? So you either need to see more clients to make the amount of money that you're making, or you need to take a pay cut. And it's a pay cut either way, because if you see more clients, you're doing less good work. It has health costs and things for our mental health and for our physical health as therapists. So it's a massive cut either way. They're basically saying that you can do everything you need to do in therapy in 37 minutes, which again, like that's an obscure number, right? That's a prime number. We don't use it for anything. 37. It's not a popular number. It's not a thing we use as a measure, an increment for anything. This is some sort of algorithm-based outcome that they're saying we can make profit up until this point. And again, they don't disclose those things. There's no transparency in who they're deciding is worth a certain amount of money and whose lives are expendable and we can kill through bureaucracy. When eventually, hopefully, there's accountability for things like this, those things will be made clear. And I'm sure it'll be a really terrible system they've employed. And I do 60-minute sessions, right? Just for frame of reference. 53 is fine. Sort of the idea that you're doing an hour session in your schedule as a therapist, and 53 minutes of those are with the patient, which is the only time you get paid for. No notes, no bathroom break, no snack break, only paid when you see somebody face to face. I used to, when I started out, it was 30-minute sessions, or I think it was 53 then too. But again, it was just sort of like we shorthand that to an hour. You sort of just ate that cost as a therapist. And as a marriage therapist, like, sessions take longer. You have two people. You're regulating, co-regulating, letting each person have some time to talk, processing together. Like, there's another person in the room. I understand in theory why therapists charge more for that. I don't, because for me, you're paying for my time. Whether one person or two people are using my time isn't a huge difference. But I was also trained as a LMFT. Like, I started doing couples work. That's the first session I ever saw live, was a couples session, which is not what most therapists do. I would argue very few therapists start out by just doing systems work, couples or family work from the get-go. That's odd. That's rare that I did it that way. And so for me, doing couples is in a lot of ways easier than individual work. That's not true. It's not easier. I'm just as comfortable with it. So I charge the same rate, which is not what a lot of therapists do. Another sort of bugaboo of mine, it's fine. We'll get to my issues with therapists in this. I'm going to take the insurance companies to task first. The other big thing they did that's a huge cut that I have a problem with how they did it more than I disagree with it. They took doctoral level people, PhD, PsyD providers, and are going to pay them the same level as master's level providers. They acknowledged that discrepancy was problematic, and instead of raising what they were going to pay master's level therapists, they lowered what they're going to pay PhDs. I have been outspoken about this topic and have talked about this a lot. People who get their PhDs are not inherently better providers. The way that we do PhD education in America, in higher ed here in this country, is poor. Those people cost more because they're paying off their loans. That's all it is. I have my master's and my postgraduate degree. Somebody with their PhD does not have more schooling than me. They just have different letters after their name. Arguably the dumbest person I've ever been in school since high school. I'm going to exclude 18-year-olds and under in my experience in high school. College forward, the dumbest person I've ever went to school with went on to get their PhD and has their PhD. I don't think they see clients. I think they're in academia. But yeah, I don't have a ton of respect for PhD level academics as somebody who has been in higher ed for a long time, both as a student and as an instructor. Your PhD doesn't mean anything to me other than like you're either super nerdy about research or you're insecure and needed the letters after your name to feel good about yourself, but you're not actually that good at your job. And I'm being like grossly oversimplistic. I'm not like antagonistic to people with their PhDs, but it has always been a problem that people who, the way that we compensate therapists is different based on their licensure, even though there is no compensation for things like postgraduate degrees, special trainings you get. And again, the whole system is rife with exploitation. I also am outspoken about the cannibalism of therapy, where therapists are charging other therapists as a main source of their income for like business related things that they can't guarantee their outcomes. So that's business coaching. Let me teach you how to fill your practice, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of grossness out there that I think really lovely people and high quality therapists fall prey to because they are not really well informed on things like economics and business practices, and the ethics that they hold for their clients are different than the ethics that they hold for themselves as a business owner. And that, again, deserves to be criticized. I don't hold any illusion that I get it all right or that my setup is perfect and great. I will say my setup is fairly intentional. I do feel like it's very values and ethics aligned for me as a person. I do think it is ethical in the way that I provide for my clients. And I'm a sole provider. I don't have employees. I don't want employees. I'm not set up for that. I could not do that well because there's no system for that. There's no system for me with that. There are practices that are W-2s that have employees, not independent contractors, that they run their practice well, that people are compensated well, everybody is happy and winning. Again, like that exists. I often will have those people on my podcast, but I've had a bunch of therapists on my podcast who I think are great therapists, who I think are utter shite business owners. And it honestly, after a time, like does shade the way that I think about them and want to refer to them, to sort of understand that their like material analysis of how they participate in capitalism is so poor that like I loathe their business practices. Therapists, stop having people be 1099s. They're not. You cannot have an independent contractor therapist underneath you if you're not having them do a new contract for every single client they have. And I know none of y'all are doing that. Every employment lawyer I've ever interacted with has said therapists cannot be independent contractors like that. If you are at a practice regularly, you could probably see clients for like 3 months and do that under one contract, I suppose. But again, like nobody does that. Therapists are at their practices for years as independent contractors. That's not how that works. And then you don't get to say, oh, capitalism is bad. The system is really shortchanging our clients, blah, blah, blah. When you refuse to pay into the social safety net because you do not pay taxes the way that you would if you were an employer instead of somebody who was independent contractors. So therapists, be better. Y'all drive me crazy with that bullshit. So again, my system works well for me. I do think it is ethical. I do think it's great. There are things that I don't do in my practice because I couldn't, right? I couldn't run it the way I wanted. I couldn't do the things that I wanted. I couldn't exist as a member of society without doing it the way that I do it. So I don't have employees because I don't think there's an ethical way to do that with the amount of money that you can make doing therapy. I only view that as wealth extraction, and that's shitty. Therapists should stop doing that. It's cannibalizing our own profession, and we have to be held to account as a profession for part of the reason that so many therapists are leaving is we make it so hard and expensive to get into the business. And that doesn't mean that I think we should lower standards. It doesn't mean that I think we should do some of those things. It's not the Wild West. Let's not let everybody in. We should have standards. There should be education, accreditation, all of that stuff. But like, stop making it so hard for people to open a practice. Stop charging everybody for every little thing, selling them some sort of mythical business thing that just happened to work for you, but cannot work for everyone. Because if it worked for everyone, it would just be common knowledge. I don't do a lot of episodes like this because I get angry. There's just a lot to be angry about when like you can sort of peel back layers on things and understand some of the complexity, but also see like there's an obviously easier system available. And it's not capitalism. I can tell you that. I need a drink break here. That's the bad part of doing solo episodes is it's probably not great for my mental health. From a sustainability perspective, not on an episode by episode basis. But also I can't take drink breaks when I let my guests talk. So yes, PhDs did not ever really deserve a significantly more amount of money. It is like laughably evil and like comic book bad guy hilarious that instead of raising the rates for master's level providers, they lowered the rates for PhD providers. And again, in sort of peeling back the layers of this, understand that like there's an attack on education from the Trump administration. Linda McMahon is coming for your A1 steak sauce. That's a deep cut for people needing to be online a lot to understand the reference I just made. But I hope somebody laughed about it. The Trump administration has also basically said that like people with their masters of divinity and like are in some sort of like ministry, those degrees matter more than nurses and law degree. I think they left law degrees alone because again, that would hurt their bottom line. But they basically have messed up licensure across the board. it was an executive order, so every like functional licensing agency has sort of ignored it because you can actually do that with executive orders. They're not laws. Stupid America. But yeah, like that was a thing that I think flew under the radar for a lot of folks, is their recategorization of licensure. Basically saying that, like, yeah, you're the person down the street who's a pastor has more credibility than somebody who has their master's in counseling psychology. Great news, everybody. I'm covered for both. I am a certified, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say cleric, but that's obviously like D&D terminology, not reverend. I'm an ordained minister. There we go. That is the thing. I just need to get like an honorary judge, and I'm pretty set up for my degrees. I could marry and divorce people then. I don't know if honorary judges actually can do that. I can marry people, which I've only done once. I don't particularly enjoy weddings as a licensed marriage and family therapist who spends a lot of time with relationships on the brink. I'm not one to romanticize the wedding ceremony, and certainly not the modern capitalism involved in that. If you can believe that much, I'm critical of the capitalistic nature of the wedding industry. Don't get me started on funeral costs. I'm fun at parties. I'm joking. I don't go to parties. I'm an introvert. The way that the insurance companies cut this is so broad that I can't envision a practitioner who isn't affected. People who are who take insurance are going to be affected by this. Basically, the only people who won't be affected by this, people who are never in network with Aetna and people who didn't work with Alma, which is like a minority of therapists. Again, Aetna was a big enough insurance provider where a lot of people are in network with them. The tinfoil hat version of this is there is a big sort of venture capitalist company that came in and purchased Alma recently. And again, like venture capitalism is bad and always has been. And if you're wondering about the acceleration of how much stuff is like gotten shittier in your lifetime, and again, for millennials at least, this is an objectifiable fact. This is not old man shouting at clouds. Things are worse because venture capital keeps buying things up and then making it worse. Now, this is not a new concept for capitalism. I've talked about this in the past, where Kellogg's very famously ran a study to see how much sawdust they could put in their cereal before people noticed a difference in taste. Corporations will never run their business model on doing the best service possible if there's a shortcut to more money. And capitalism provides lots of shortcuts to more money. So again, there's big money behind Alma, and there's sort of various theories out there about how this all connects. I don't think it's conspiratorial per se. I don't think we actually know for sure what the goal and some of the end game is, but to suggest that big money investment in this and people who are worried about stock prices and shareholder making money, that's the reason this is happening. Sure, I don't think that's conspiratorial. The how and where all the dots are going to connect, I think, is still at least not apparent, if not like still up in the air. This could backfire. Again, it might cause it might cause enough people to leave Aetna that they either have to course correct or other providers actually raise their rates. Insurance providers raise their rates in order to like attract a large swath of the therapy population as clients. I'm guessing that it's going to be probably the course correction. Again, I don't like to prognosticate, and I get a lot of things wrong. It's not great to be somebody who has a podcast and does weekly episodes. It's hard to not get into the let me guess business, but I try and stay out of that. One, just because I don't want to jinx the universe like that. But also, I do think it's hard to know for sure right now what the goal was. Certainly, the cynical side of me thinks, well, this is a money grab. They're going to slash that and then either sell it off, or the people who are making money off of this are going to bail quickly and get it to somebody else to hold the bag. Again, I think capitalism, late stage capitalism, is sort of this game of hot potato at the end here. It's probably the taxpayers who will end up paying for it. How fun. The other idea is that, yeah, like they'll get away with it, and that sucks. I don't think a ton of, it's so hard to say because again, because of our problems as a profession, not insurance companies, because of the way that we make it difficult for new providers to get started in a way where they can make livable money, it won't surprise me if people sort of cut rates and try and see as many people as they can in a day. That's not new. I just don't think that will ever be a majority of the profession. I think people get into this profession because they want to be helpful. And it's really hard to be helpful in 37 increments on the clock every single day of the week on repeat. It just, that gets exhausting. So I don't think that'll become the norm. So I do sort of think they'll course correct, but there's some version of this where certainly they just get away with it. There's also maybe the idea that people are going to move away from some of the insurance companies, move into private practice, and then by investing in Alma, this venture capitalist is going to sweep up a lot of those people and potentially make more money that way. Again, I don't know that the red threads on our pin board are quite there on the conspiracy, but I don't think it's super far-fetched. I just think that would be a gamble, but to suggest that venture capitalists never gamble would be a lie. That's all the stock market is, and a way to get rid of people ever having pensions. America's been at this for a while. Now, for my fellow therapists, why would they do this? Well, I think if you're a therapist, why would you work with Headway? Why would you work with Alma? Again, I think a lot of therapists get into the profession because they want to be helpful. And it's sort of the bleeding heart that says, I need to offer reduced rates in order for people to be able to afford me. And if this company says they will defray some of the cost or help my clients pay for it or navigate their insurance, then I don't have a problem with that. I always had a problem with that because you can't fix the broken system by operating in the system. Right? For those who are waiting for the eventual collapse of America, let me repeat that out loud. You can't fix the system by operating within the system. And so Alma, Headway, some of these things might have been great ideas and better than the evil counterparts of United Healthcare, of the 7 big insurers, Humana, Cigna, the other ones, the ones that have all made billions of dollars in profit, while we regular peasants can't afford to take a ride in the ambulance to the hospital when we're having a mental health emergency. So it's sort of, it's extraction of wealth in the sense that, like, this doesn't need to be a thing. The system is broken, not in that we need Alma and Headway to come in and fix it, but that, like, we just need a new system. And so it was sort of, in my opinion, always inevitable that whatever services we're providing would either get more expensive for us as providers or would start to cause harm to the clients we serve in how we could do care. And yep, both those things. Again, it's almost laughably evil how they decided to go about this in truly the worst fashion for everyone, for mental health providers and for the patients that they serve. And so it's not a surprise to me at all. And again, that's not to pat myself on the back. I'm happy it does not affect me, certainly. And it's a bummer. It's a bummer for people who are now stressing in, are they going to keep their clients? Do they need to see their clients for less? Are they going to lose their clients? They need to revamp their whole business practice. And again, if you're running your practice in a way that says, I want to serve clients this specific way, you're probably best served doing that outside of the insurance industry. Like, I'm a big proponent of private practice. If you want to have employees or be part of a big practice, then you all need to be W-2s. Ranted about that earlier. Again, it's not sort of all is lost, but like, I still struggle as somebody who's pretty confident in the way that I run my practice. And like, I just raised my rates recently, and I'm still cheaper than a lot of people who have been doing the therapy game less long than I have and don't have the specialties that I have, because I try and keep it affordable in a certain rate, but also my affordability is dictated by factors outside of my control, like rent, like inflation, like housing costs and healthcare costs. I have a family. I have to just pay for things, and the amount of people I see in a week is finite, both by literal time, but also like for me to provide the care that I like to provide in the way that I like to provide. I have about 15 people a week that I see. I used to see 26. I wasn't doing as good of work as I am now. Not everybody got the best version of me when I saw that many people in a week. I know therapists who see over 30 people a week. I know, again, I think different therapists do things differently, but certainly I can go up to 20 still and be okay. But like, I try not to do that regularly. That's the thing, that 15's like my fairly hard cap. It's not rigid forever. I think I saw 16 people a few weeks ago. So again, there's some exceptions. Sometimes it's on my calendar. It's because I have something different. And sometimes you make exceptions as a therapist because somebody calls you in and they're in crisis and you're going to see them. But again, and then we as therapists spend a lot of time doing documentation and paperwork and all this other stuff that we're not paid for, that isn't directly client facing, but is for our clients' benefits. And then, I do stuff like this, right? For me, putting out free content regularly is an important part of practice. My practice, in the sense that, like, yes, not everyone can afford to see me, and that's a bummer. That's not because of how I set my rates. That's because of how expensive it is for me to also live under the dark cloud that is late stage capitalism. So, this is bad in a way that was like entirely predictable and is part of the collapse. I think like that so many people are like, I don't think therapists are surprised. I don't want to throw shade at people for being surprised. I think by and large therapists are just disappointed, and we're all pretty aware of like the mental health crisis going on, both for the population writ large and for our profession. That, like, again, where there's a therapy shortage, and we don't have enough people coming in. Too many people leaving, not enough people coming in. So this is bad. This makes a bad situation worse. Again, it's sort of laughably evil. It's like, who was the senator who was like, again, Joe Manchin, was in West Virginia or whatever. He was a Democrat, and he voted like 2 issues Democrat, and everything else he's basically Republican. But at the time, he was a very important figure because he could sort of be, it was like him and Kristen Sinema, the independent from Arizona or whatever, sort of had a lot of power. And it was like, at any point, somebody who's like basically an oil baron and like spends the majority of the year on his yacht while he doesn't work because he doesn't need the money, but somehow he's an elected official, hopefully going to save democracy for us all, is like, right, this guy who's made a shit ton of money off of oil and polluting the planet and regularly backs big oil and owns a super yacht, like, is a bad guy. In any cartoon show as a kid I watched, that guy probably needs an eye patch, but even without the eye patch, he's overtly the evil person. That's sort of the insurance companies here. I mean, insurance companies have always been evil. But yeah, it's almost comically evil, almost laughably, absurdly nonsensical how this is being handled. And it's bad. So I think, yeah, I think those were all the talking points I want to talk about. I will continue to call out therapists and their bad practices. Again, I don't know that private practice solves everything. I think therapists who are running a private practice, that they put a lot of time and effort into having it set up to be ethical and the way that they want to run it, are going to provide better service to people. You will get a better bang for your buck with that. And I've been poor for a majority of my life. I'm certainly not wealthy now. I am a millennial who, like most people, is a major healthcare issue away from having no money. Um, but again, I built my practice in a way where I wouldn't say it's like dire straits. I have more money now than ever before, and also it doesn't feel like it goes very far because shit's so expensive. And I got kids. Those gosh darn kids. I would say my kids are not nearly the expense that like having Donald Trump in office has been. Thanks, MAGA Republicans, you idiots. And to all the uninformed voters who hook, line, and sinker on the propaganda. But yes, I'm not much harmed by this. And again, I would love to offer therapy for free because all of us everywhere had all of our basic needs met. We have enough food to feed everybody in the world. We have enough housing to house everyone in the world. Like, let's just do that. Let's just do that. And then my particular skill set, which is being very calm and co-regulating to people, and my knowledge base, which is psychology and a bunch of other stuff that isn't psychology because it's also deeply colonial. Psychology, not my knowledge base, but probably that too. Can be put to use without needing to pay my bills. But until then, here we are. And until such a time as that, I will continue to put out free content like this, which is not therapy, but is hopefully good information, and maybe it's sometimes entertaining. And it's better than listening to Joe Rogan. So I'm gonna keep doing it. Yeah, I do have guests coming up. This is exciting. It's a good little break for me. Doing an episode where I interview somebody and just have a conversation. It's always so much easier than doing solo content. Except for the part of my brain that really loathes scheduling. And it's really hard for my brain. If you are a local to the Milwaukee area, in a couple weeks is Pride. I will be out at Pride Fest in Milwaukee. We will be taking signups for a retreat that I'm running later in the year, August 14th through 16th in the beautiful, tiny little locale of Princeton, Wisconsin. It's about 90 minutes outside of Milwaukee, 90 minutes outside of Madison. For survivors of religious trauma, I'll be doing a retreat there, but at Pride, we will be taking signups for it and taking donations for it. I have grant money going towards that already, which is great. And we're going to see if we can raise some more money for that specifically. So if you are a local, please come out to Pride, say hi, maybe get a shirt, or I don't even know what else I have. Other people are in charge of things. I will be, busy talking to people about religious trauma and also dressed as Jesus. So it's funny, and Pride is awesome, and always a great celebration to be a part of. So if you're local, come out to Pride. If you're not a local, not this week, but next week, we'll have an update in the links in the show notes where you can donate to that if that is a cause that you would like to support, which is great. I'm just sort of moved away from Patreon, moved away from some of the other stuff. I think I still have a link for merch. We'll be closing some of that stuff out and just doing a straight donation link for people to support religious trauma survivors, just to sort of streamline some of that. And because I switched some of my billing stuff recently, it's a whole thing, right? It's a whole thing. It's a therapist and a business owner. But yes, if you're local, come out to Pride and keep an eye out for some cool stuff. We will be back next week with another new episode. We will be back this summer with various guests talking about various topics. So it's not just me ranting and raving about the impending collapse, which is good for my mental health to have guests. So some cool stuff coming up. That's what I got. If you don't follow me on YouTube, go like and subscribe. It's Wellness with Jer is the YouTube channel. My channel is like at a weird sort of growth point. So it's not monetized in the way that like big YouTubers are, but it's monetized in the way that small YouTubers are. And we could get up to that other thing. That'd be cool. Cause I gotta keep doing capitalism too. It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite. If you're just a podcast listener and not a YouTube person, rate or whatever podcasts do. I listen to like 3 podcasts, but I've rated all of them because that's the thing that you're supposed to do, to let our corporate overlords and tech bosses know that we like a thing. So do that. And then tune in next week. We'll be back with more mental health content for y'all. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of somebody else. It's tough out there, y'all. Peace.